Right, it's tough to align to the spotlight. Good morning to everyone. I thank you for the introduction. So the panel, and we were preparing for the conversation, we were also thinking and how to link the conversation or the theme of this panel to some of the broader challenges that Europe collectively is facing in devising a space policy and a space strategy on the way ahead. And so where this conversation comes from and where will it aim to lead, and is really to look at the bigger picture. So in the previous part of the conference program, be it yesterday or today, we have addressed many of the individual elements that together should or would form a future European space strategy. Monsieur Jaffard mentioned, for instance, the element of secured connectivity as a way where space can serve Europe's economy and security. I see Remco on the first floor. Yesterday we've had this interesting conversation about how to tackle and overcome the challenge that Europe will likely face in the space sector with the challenges of workforce and potential retirement wave in the European space industry. Yesterday we can refer to the conversation of the need for innovative regulatory framework to ensure that what we do in space in Europe is secured on the side of regulation, but also that regulation can enable industry and business activity on the way ahead. So there are many of these elements how together would shape what's going on. What I think, or where we come from, is that Europe, there are a range of undisputed strengths and achievements that Europe can boast, but there are maybe also some elements, some more problematic issues where maybe Europe is not faring as good as maybe some other actors on the global stage would be doing. Where we stand right now is we stand in a rather complex ecosystem where you have nations, intergovernmental organizations, industry, the supranational element. So we have a lot of these individual strategies, and maybe what I aim to achieve here is to look at this big picture and to see maybe what are some of the key themes on the way ahead. And before I give the floor to the speakers here, maybe a challenge for us for the conversation. I'm quite amazed and impressed to see how much of students and young professionals are today in the audience. And for me, at least, that's a personal challenge to maybe find the right words to speak in a way that maybe can be digested and can be communicated in a way that is approachable to a wider audience. So let's see if we can do that. My first question, or where we would like to start off, is using the experience and the expertise of the gentleman that I have with me on stage, is to really look ahead at Europe, and maybe if we look at the time frame of the next 10 to 15 years, what is it that Europe needs to improve? What is it in our ambition that should be bigger? How our ambition should improve? Kai-Uwe, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Tomas. You already start with the most difficult question. Very good. And you certainly expect that I now say, we need more money. I will not say that. Of course, that doesn't mean, Paul, that we actually do not need more money. We do. But I would like to start with something different. And I would say, responding to your question, what we need as Europeans in space is more confidence. You might now be a little bit surprised, but when you look around, the mood currently is not so good. We see all problems, we face this issue, we have this problem, dilemma, we have this question and so on. And also the question, where are we going? What are we doing? This is something which shows that we have doubts, but we do not necessarily have to have such doubts. We are, as Europeans, we are achievers. We have been achieving fantastic things. We have been achieving the greatest challenges in space science. We have been landing on a moon, on Saturn, we chased the comet. We are now chasing an asteroid. We have the very best most accurate navigation system, and this in the first generation, while the Americans needed 4 or 5 generations to get to that point. We have the best Earth observation system, Copernicus. So we can be confident, and this is something on which we should build. It is our strength, and it is something which then also engages everybody, and not only everybody meaning the member states or the stakeholders, including industry, but it's also the general public. And I saw a sign of confidence here in the audience when I saw the astronauts, which will be showing up in the afternoon. Maybe you can stand up, please. Yes, good. So this is what. This is, thank you very much. This is what I mean when I say confidence. And you said talk to the youth, and the youth is talking to us, and I think that's the signal. Be confident. They are confident, and we should also elaborate that. And that's my starting point. We will certainly dwell then on concrete issues where we can go more into detail, but my call is that Europe is achieving, Europe is delivering, and that we can be confident on the national levels, in the industrial field, in the governmental sector, and also in the educational sector, that we will also be able to deliver in the 30s and up to the 40s.
Thank you. Paul?
Yes, it was already a very good opening here, and where should follow and where to start. I think if we go back hundreds or thousands of years, then Europe has been always leading in the space dome somehow, watching the stars and making the first discoveries about the universe, and all the physicists come from Europe. And but the challenge, I think, what we are facing is that, okay, of course, from technology point of view, Europe is leading. And why we are maybe lagging behind today and we aren't really state of art is because maybe our mentality, the way we have operated so far, we are confident that it's good, but we are not able to change or not willing to change. And it's maybe the heritage what we have gained in the past decades. We are proud of it, of course we have to be proud of it, but it doesn't mean that it is something how we should continue for the next decades. So I think the way we should think about the future and forget the mentality that, but it has always been done like that the past decades. I think it's something where we need to think to change. What's the positive part about the Estonian space domain, and what was also mentioned by Kai-Uwe, is exactly that we don't have actually the heritage. So we are a relatively young team in the government sector doing space, and also, of course, our industry is young, meaning that we don't have the mentality that it has been always done for decades, something like that, and we are more maybe open-minded to change and do something cool, as I have said many times already before. And another thing is also, of course, if you're talking about the space domain and the only thing we need is funding, I think it's wrong. It's one thing what will never be missing on Earth is money. It's always there. Finance is also, as a representative from the government sector, I can say that there is always funding there. The question is, for which activities? Is it a good investment or not? And if someone is not getting money, for example, in a space project, then it means that make your own conclusions. So it means maybe something is missing and how to improve it, how to bring it really to the next level. And another thing, even if it's from technology point of view the best, then of course how to sell it to the politicians and the decision makers that it is the best way to go ahead. So I think many things of course can be improved, but the way is how can we do it maybe together as one European project.
There is maybe one follow-up question which I would follow up on that, and I'll maybe take the advantage of looking at your affiliations with maybe a member state perspective, an ESA perspective, which collectively represents the majority of the origin of where the public budgets or the money in Europe comes from and where it is actually being implemented. So Paul, maybe I will start with you for this one. You mentioned about this directionality, where the money should be spent. These messages in your first intervention, how do they translate into the Estonian space strategy? What is out there that Estonia will do in space based on what was discussed here? What is the European? What is national? What is the priority at the national level? How is this vision translated in your work?
It's a very difficult question, of course. So, why we are doing space in Estonia? Why we are investing space? So I think no one above my head, the people, no one is really thinking that we should be the leading country in the space domain. It's my vision that we should be. But why we are investing there and why people believe that space is a good domain where to invest is that we have discovered that investing into space accelerates the R&D investments of our industry, and to build new products, services, and space is a very good sector for that, to really be state-of-art, to have a technology-based economy, and in the space field we can do a lot. And in the past 10 years, where we have 10 plus years, we had cooperation with the European Space Agency. It has been very positive for our industry, and we can clearly see the results. And of course here we have to think not only on a national level that how can these developments benefit our Estonian economy, but Europe as a whole. So how can the Estonian technologies that we are, or product services what we are developing together with ESA, how Europe can benefit overall. And for example, here we have the cyber range activities, what we are doing, what was also referred to during the keynote speech. Exactly these, we are not doing them for us Estonians, but for Europe as a whole. So it's again, you have to understand where how your own industry can contribute to the space sector, and where's the niche, and how this contribution where everyone can benefit out of it. Yeah.
And that is actually something where I think I would underline from what you were saying about the recognition, which probably applies to many of the European states, or which should apply to many of the European countries, is it that looking at doing a national policy activities that are not only targeting maybe the national priorities, but that have that European perspective in mind, which I would personally, say it's not that common as of yet.
I mean, if you're only targeting national priorities, I think in long term you will fail, because then you are doing only something in your own garden, and you will have no contact with others. Of course, maybe in case of large member states or large countries, it will work. But if you're a small country, then like Estonia, you always have to find the connections to others. And I think so therefore the national priorities have to be connected also to others, and to really have the effect of growth.
Maybe same question for you, Kai-Uwe, in terms of how the vision, you mentioned a lot, the confidence, how we can maybe see that being developed, being implemented, being proposed at the ESA level. What comes to my mind as maybe one specific example is that ESA will undergo through its next appropriation phase next year at the Ministerial Council 2025. Can you maybe elaborate some, what can we expect? Will we see that confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. But first of all, let me respond to what Paul said, which is very positive and which is also a fantastic feedback for ESA. And I can assure you, also the big member states, they cannot do it alone. So they also need Europe as a sounding body, as a market, as also co-collaborators. And this means that all countries, be they big, be they medium, be they small, they need, for the European space effort, they need ESA, because ESA is their body which provides them with the opportunity and possibility through our mechanisms to, if intelligently done, through funding and subscription, to build up over many years capabilities, capacities, and industrial capacities to be successful in specific areas, in technologies, in niches, which then can turn also to commercial successes. And Estonia is doing that in its 10 years of participation or membership in ESA, which will be celebrated next year. to a fantastic extent, which shows that a national policy and a good way of bringing together all the stakeholders and putting them together into one goal and one perspective can make the space undertaking actually work. And this is where we build on, and talking about celebrations and anniversaries. 10 years of ESA membership of Estonia next year coincides with 50 years of ESA convention. So since 50 years, since half a century, ESA is the multilateral body for space for our member states, working together with the European Union since a number of decades in also preparing and realizing the big flagship activities which are then run and operated by the European Union. And what we have in view is, I put it in one single term, phrase or concept, it's public value. And this encompasses, of course, industrial strength, it's also competitivity, it's also the profitability of the companies, but it's even more. It is public value taking advantage of what our space assets can do for policies on Earth and for societal activities ranging from the questions regarding security to applications in mobility, connectivity, and so on. And this is something which is guiding us and which makes us successful. And this is why, fortunately, I have to say Paul is right. Money is not so much the problem. It is that we come up with attractive proposals, also listen carefully to what the member states want and need, and then put that into program proposals. As you say, if they are not attractive, if they don't meet the interest and the needs of the member states, not the need and the translation into public value, then they are not subscribed. But if they are met, then money is certainly there. And this is also our hope that in the next ministerial, which is upcoming for November 25, we will again provide a menu of program proposals which will be attractive, which respond also to the current needs and not only to the recurrent needs like strengthening the competitiveness of our industry, but include also issues like resilience, which is the top issue since our last ministerial in 22. So I'm optimistic that we will be able, together with the member states, to prepare such a menu which is attractive, and then also the funding comes in, but what is even more important, the, let's say, acceptance and also the real engagement of the member states in these activities.
I would maybe again follow up with that, because what you mentioned, this public value is I consider is an excellent ambition, in the sense that I think this is the future of space, the way how we think of space, the enabling function that it provides to public policies, or hopefully to other business segments in the future. I honestly believe this is where we should look forward. And maybe Kai-Uwe, you really have your personal also experience with thorough connection to the ministerial processes, to the engagements with parliaments. What can we do better? What can we do better so that this high-level political buy-in into space can be achieved? Maybe there are some better examples, maybe from some parts of the Europe. I would personally see, for instance, President Macron or the French systems being more connected to it. We may disagree, we may agree on that, but no. Underlyingly, what can we do better so that the politicians can see the value of the space better?
Well, I think it's about explaining and communicating. It's not this term, educate somebody. It's really to explain. It's to explain how public value is generated by space. And then very concretely for each of the countries and each of the societies also explain why space is responding to their needs. Let me, if we have time, a small kind of anecdote, which is very closely related and very important for that purpose. We had the visit 2 years ago, before the Russian war of aggression on Ukraine. We had Finnish parliamentarians in ESA headquarters. So I was responsible for that, so we prepared, of course, Nokia, telecommunications, startups, and so on. Then we did the introductory round. And they started off with, well, my name is so-and-so, my constituency is 20 kilometers from the Russian border. The next one, my name is so-and-so, my constituency is 50 kilometers from the Russian border. And we immediately realized, well, this is an expectation. We, of course, then reshuffled all our presentations and responded to what ESA is doing in the field of security, resiliency, and safety. But this is something which shows and makes clear that you have first to learn to understand what the societies represented then by the politicians need, and then to explain what can you do, how can you contribute to solve these issues or at least to meet these expectations. And we were quite successful in this respect, and the activities of Finland and other countries in this area and in this field show that they have a confidence in ESA to help them with these issues.
Paul, anything on your side?
I think one of the best sectors in space who have been able and capable to show their capabilities to politicians, explain what they're doing, is Earth observation. Because they are showing imagery to politicians to understand, okay, I'm living there, my house is there, and of course showing the change and how you can build applications. And I think in the past years, the Copernicus program and also our Earth Observation Directorate in ESA have been very successfully selling the results of remote sensing. Not about the story about the Sentinel satellites, but about applications and showing real results. The challenge maybe with cybersecurity is that it's not visible. It's more difficult to showcase it to the politicians and so that they understand that something is really happening and it is necessary. A few years ago, it was very difficult to go to Estonian authorities and, for example, tell about Galileo PRS service, this publicly regulated service, because we don't have any issues today. The story is different, because everyone understands that the GPS signal, you cannot rely on it 100%. And now if there are more real showcases that how space technologies can improve the situation, then understand. So really, hands-on experiences where politicians really make the difference, understand what's going on, what you are doing.
One specific challenge, maybe building on your examples, that I would bring into that conversation, and then actually I would ask our relatively young audience to maybe give us or give me personally some recommendations how to do that, is when you enter this discussion with the politicians, like the parliamentarians that you mentioned, what I struggled with personally in some of the advocacy work that I did over the past years was when you start making the case of space, you immediately face a question from a politician: where do I cut? As if it was a zero-sum game, and potentially to some extent it is. Do you cut healthcare? Do you cut schools? Making the case for space, and I believe in this room, all of us are some of the fans for space. So if we were to do some of those advocacy work, I think that may be something, and that will likely be something that some of us may be facing when making the case for space, or when asking for some of the money, which I guess, gentlemen, you mentioned will not potentially be a problem. I want to move on to some of the more maybe practical elements of that reflection of maybe a future space policy initiatives, future European space strategy. Let me introduce it in this way. I come from an organization that is a Europe's think tank for space, so it is our job, our bread and butter, to think about how to help governments, how to help ESA, how to help those who make policy decisions happen. And as part of that job, we have recently gathered a group of approximately 20-25 experts to think exactly, you know, if you look at Europe collectively in 2030, what should the space strategy of Europe, the collective one, if it happens, what should it respond to? What should it concentrate on? And the group rather clearly agreed on kind of a two overarching kind of dimensions. And so the one dimension of that would be the economic dimension, about ensuring how space is integrated in a broader economy, how the space economy itself in Europe can be competitive. And other one, I would say, unsurprisingly, was really linked to the security, how space can be useful for the security of Europe's citizens, economies, and societies, and also as a function of it, how we can secure our space assets themselves. Maybe let's start with the economic dimension. So, gentlemen, I'll give you the floor. I think there is a range of themes that we can discuss. Maybe let's think about this directionality aspect. If we were to prioritize, if we were to say what is the most important thing, let's maybe try to identify that. If you think about this economic dimension of the space strategy, you know, it is about the competitiveness of the industry, about the Europe's ability to innovate. It can be about commercialization, how to ensure that the ideas that emerge in industry or academia can be brought to a business case and a viable business case. So all these kind of things, I'm sure I missed have some. Kai-Uwe, maybe I'll start with you this time.
Well, they are all valid, and all of them have to be followed. We cannot only support this sector of the industry to the detriment of the other one. We need the heritage space companies for building big systems. Absolutely clear. A startup cannot build Galileo. But we need also the startups as the newcomers, as bringing new ideas, new methods, also challenging a little bit in between. So we have to balance that, and I think the instrumentarium, the toolbox which ESA has developed through its means is very good and responds to practically all the segments. It is again, and Paul will certainly comment on that, the task of the member states, how they would like to see that in the end balanced out in our programs and in the big set of programs and activities. But I'm also quite positive that we are there on a good way. We are implementing new methods and means like challenges. In particular, ESA also as an anchor customer. This is something the member states asked us. We delivered concepts and implement since then concepts since our ESA Council in Seville. So we are on that track. I would point out one specific and very interesting issue, since you mentioned groups which are consulting. I was responsible recently for setting up an advisory group of personalities outside the space sector, which should make us being prepared for closing the only capability gap we have, which is human spaceflight, autonomous human spaceflight. And one of these participants in that group, a former information minister of a big country, gave us the following advice. And this was something which surprised us from the executive, but then also opened our eyes. He said, you should also not only describe the benefits and the positive aspects of any investment and any development. You should also challenge the politicians and those who are decision makers, who provide the budget, with a question of what is the cost of inaction? So what will it cost your society, your government, your people, if you don't act and don't invest now? And this is something, of course, you have to do that in a subtle way and in a friendly way. But nevertheless, this is also a very important element which we are now also considering in our practically also day-to-day work, and it is a strong element, it is a strong argument, and it supersedes then the question to get entangled in cut here, cut there instead of this. Challenge by asking the question, what do you think will be the cost of inaction?
I think the question about what's the cost of inaction is a very good one, and I will try it tomorrow basically on my colleagues. But I think the main challenge in my point of view is that, okay, I'm also working for the government sector, and my task is related to R&D activities. So how to accelerate R&D activities, and the European Space Agency is one of the best tools which helps our industry to grow. And we, which means me and my ESA colleagues, we have to think about new programs. The challenge now for the industry is that, are the programs a one-time thing, that you do the program, maybe you will get some profit out of it, maybe not, and that's it. What happens afterwards? And here's the question about the government sector as a smart customer. And also not only the government sector, also the private sector, if someone actually needs the technology that we are developing. And I think if you're talking about the future European space economy, it's something where we have to more focus on. It's good to dream about huge programs, but the question is, what happens afterwards? And we need to be very clear that if you're developing new technologies, that there is a certain will to implement these technologies later in the government sector. So it's overall, I think the main challenge what we are facing is the government sector as an anchor customer for European technologies. And here we have to bring the two sides together and really understand exactly what was the question, that what happens if we aren't doing anything. It's the worst case scenario, of course, if we aren't just sitting around and waiting for something to happen. In the space domain, we are, I think, normally the opposite, always looking for some trouble. And but here again, and here I have been talking to many Estonian agencies, for example, who are somehow using space technologies, but it's still very difficult to get a clear answer. Yes, in 5 years we would really need it, because everyone is there. I need it today, not in 5 years. And sometimes we all know the stories. They go to the competitors in outside Europe, without mentioning the names, and somehow the challenge is solved today, so they're pushing the challenges forward to tomorrow, or then they're getting new challenges in 5 years. But again, government is smart customer, we have to educate. I think ESA is already doing a good job with many ways how we can procure through ESA activities. ESA as a customer, and the industry delivers, but we need to keep the pace and go even further and farther.
There is a question from the audience, and maybe I think both of you gentlemen can potentially reply to that one. Okay, well, I would ask you maybe about the first element, because you already started speaking about the models of cooperation that maybe ESA would be putting forward. You mentioned challenges, maybe some ideas towards the anchor customer tendencies. So our audience is asking, what are there opportunities in the private sector to collaborate with ESA? I think the question potentially can lead towards a cooperation agreements that go beyond the traditional procurement. Are you able to maybe tell us what's out there in these models of cooperation that you already indicated?
I guess the most relevant information for that purpose is that we have programs, in particular in our basic activities, which are open directly, not via the member states, channeling and organizing then the participation in programs, which are open to direct participation, in particular in technology fields and also in visionary fields. And this is what I see in the second question. Our discovery program, for example, in the basic activities, seeks through calls such inputs, and I can only encourage Estonian companies and startups also to watch out for that and then make a proposal, because the opportunities are very good, and when you are into that, then you can also make a big difference.
I think the answer is easy. Talk to ESA, talk to the national delegation. So Madis is here in the room, and also the main organizer of the event, Sander, is here. So they are the main national contact points, and of course go to ESA colleagues who are somehow connected to these technologies, what you're developing, talk about your ideas, get the feedback. And also in Estonia we have many call for ideas where industry can propose some developments, and I think many Estonian companies have entered the ESA system in this way. They are coming with their own ideas, technologies they want to offer ESA, Europe, and we have found many interesting matches. And again, it's up to you. Just come to us, and 1 year later you will have your first activity with ESA normally.
I will switch the focus now to the second aspect of this practical implementation debate that I supported. So we discussed a bit the economic dimension, and I would like to switch the focus on the security dimension. One data point that I think it's good to start that conversation is that if you look globally at the budgets that governments or public actors put on space, that more than 50% of that spending originates in military or intelligence, so in defense budgets. And this is something where arguably we can say that, okay, most of the data is driven by statistics and budgets originating in the United States, which amounts to the largest portion of the data set. But the whole message, I think, stays the same. We can even further discuss whether Europe can do better. Can it do better nationally, through intergovernmental or through supranational frameworks? I think these are the questions which we cannot avoid irrespective of any potential moral or ethical discussion. Space was always connected to security and defense. Space is even, as probably know, very much linked to security that is not necessarily linked to military aspects. And even ESA have initiated a civil security from space program and all this consideration of what can be done on that stage. So there is a room for every actor to make a contribution to that field. Here maybe I would start with Paul. I mean, we were discussing I would maybe put it in that way, the Estonian contribution to the broader European capability build up through cybersecurity. Anything to add on that reflection on your side? How can we do better on space for security in Europe?
I think maybe 8 years ago when I joined the government sector and started to work in space, I was so surprised that people were afraid to make the connection between space and security and defense. It was something when you said in Brussels or in Paris that no, we are not talking about it. Today it has changed. And I think it's the one thing we should not deny, that there is a strong connection. And if you're looking at our industry, from where the profits come, the main customer normally is the defense domain. So there is, I think, a very strong connection, and that's life, right? And here, of course, we have to adapt the programs and our activities also accordingly, because one of the key investors in the domain is the defense sector.
Kai-Uwe?
Well, I think Laurent has given you a very clear insight of what ESA is doing and can do. We are responding to the requests and the needs of the member states. So when they say, you do this, we have an interest in setting up a program in this or that area, well, ESA is able to do practically everything in this respect. We have also various means to do that. As regular optional programs, we also have standing cooperation and coordination with EDA, the European Defence Agency, for example. And we work, of course, for the European Union in respect of security-related activities, the PRS as just the biggest example. But there are even more elements. For example, we have under Article 9.2 of our convention, 50th anniversary convention, we have the opportunity to handle and to manage national programs and projects for member states, and we are now also doing that for projects in the field of security. And then we also, and there I turn again to Estonia as a valuable member of ESA. We collaborate with single member states. I very well remember in 10 years ago when Estonia just joined the ESA. We sat down, it was Madis at that time, Madis Voras here in the audience. We sat down and we were from the executive side thinking, oh, good, we now have a member state which takes cyber, already at that time, seriously. How can we benefit? So it's not that we all only come and say, now you are a member, you do what we want you to do. So we learned and we sat down, we drafted an agreement. Madis signed that with the Director General, and then Estonia sent an expert to headquarters to help us setting up our cyber activities. So we immediately benefited from Estonian experience, Estonian championship in Europe in that field, and this was a double win for ESA and a single win for Estonia, I should say. And this developed now to the point, as we see in this conference series, which is really an element of excellence of Estonian space activities. And this is a security field, and that just means that we can, as ESA, respond when the member states wish us to do so. We can work and collaborate in any field and with any means for that purpose.
So we have final few minutes. There could be plenty of other topics in this strategy making, policy making, reflection that we can address. I mean, you indicated already to a few, such as the Europe's strength and excellence in space science or in applications. We haven't really discussed the topic of space safety and space sustainability. So if I have, as a moderator, the right to choose, I will choose actually the topic that is maybe again linked a bit to the economy in the questions from the audience. So it appears to me that we have an audience which is strongly focused on the mostly the economic considerations, and this particular question reads as following: while policymaking is critical, turning research into developed products and services is too. What is to be put in place to enable such a thriving new space economy in Europe? Paul, maybe I will start again with you if you have any thoughts on this, because your reflections largely focused on the R&D aspect, so please go ahead.
Exactly. 8 years ago when I joined the ministry, I had absolutely no idea what policymaking was. So I joined the ministry in the job interview. I said I have zero idea how the ministry works because I came from the R&D sector. Now I know. It's very much, of course, connected. Policy gives the guidelines for the R&D makers where we are going to invest, in which direction the government is going, right? And now if you're talking about why there is no SpaceX in Europe, is because the same story about how I answered one of the questions is that we need to have the government sector, not only in Estonia, but overall in Europe, as a smart procurer and customer. Here in Estonia, we are already today testing different ways, together with the European Space Agency, how to procure. For example, the space cyber range, what was also mentioned, what will be mentioned also in the following panels, it was also procured in a different way with a competitive tender where we have many consortiums competing, and having this kind of challenges for the industry, and also showing that by end of the day the government sector will be one of the key anchor customers. It's very important. So one way the policy making has to adapt to support R&D is exactly who will be the anchor customer, and again, this industry policy is a very complicated topic to address it in a few minutes, but exactly it should answer more or less the question.
Kai-Uwe?
Well, I make a surprising detour now because I I cannot much add to what Paul said, and I would like to return to your point on sustainability, because this should be discussed also on this panel. So starting point, SpaceX. I don't want the SpaceX in Europe. If you want monopolies, maybe you would embrace that, but I look in the audience and I don't see anybody who I hope would like to have a situation where one company, one person decides on everything. And this also encompasses, and now the interesting and smart way of turning to sustainability comes. This person also doesn't care about sustainability, because tens of thousands of satellites in orbit, even if they have the most wonderful control mechanisms, they are not sustainable. They are not sustainable. And there, I think we are different, the Europeans. We are not only different because we care more about the space environment, but we also care about the way we are handling that and the way we are approaching this. And you see me here wearing proudly the pin of the Zero Debris Charter. Estonia was one of the original founders of the charter, and yesterday we had the signature ceremony with 3 companies from Estonia and 1 from Belgium. And now I tell you what is really remarkable about that. It's not only that we really try honestly and seriously to help and to support sustainability in outer space also for future generation. The real difference is the following. This is a joint activity, and it's a co-collaboration, because ESA has not simply put the law on the table and said, you sign that, member states and industry. It was co-developed, and Estonia was one of the first in that group developing it, and then of the 40 first signatories. And that also led to the point where it was reported by your consultants, your legal consultants yesterday, that this will find its way, one of the key provisions in the Zero Debris Charter, into the project for a national space law in Estonia. And this is, I guess, also made possible because you were the co-owner, or are the co-owner and the co-developer of this Zero Debris Charter. And this example shows that we are, as Europeans, organized by ESA, supported by all our member states, the industry, and then also providing that to the European Union, that we are on a good way with our collaborative efforts, and this is a guiding principle for all our ESA programs. And let me return to the very first statement I made. This makes me confident.
Actually, I did want to conclude with actually reusing your words, so that's a very nice segue to that. So we are nearing the end of this panel conversation. But one point that really sticks to me, and so we discussed a lot of these practical elements, maybe some thoughts about what's on that. You eventually brought the sustainability aspect in the very end. I can echo that on a personal level, and I think Europe, using this recent momentum, such as very visibly seen in the Zero Debris movement, is a really good way forward. If we have to circle back, I mean, I would like to conclude the panel and maybe some of the final keywords from both of you. We discussed, looking ahead what needs to improve in Europe's approach to space. What is your final take? What is your final word or a final sentence? And again, taking into account, I would put it in that way, that we have mostly here, as I see, the audience of young professionals in the room. What is that this community can take for the future of Europe in space? I will start with Kai-Uwe.
Well, I will not tell you anything. I will just say I will listen during the next 2 days very attentively, and I will report that back. All the ESA stuff which is here will do the same, and then we take the conclusions and see together with the delegation how we can implement that.
Well,
I think in the space domain we cannot predict the future by just looking at the history. So we have to be more ambitious than we have been before and be open for new ideas, new challenges. And it's the only way to exactly share information, share ideas, and be more ambitious and forget sometimes even the history. So
I will take the occasion or the opportunity of a final word to balance out. So I appreciate that there was a lot of positive vibe at the in our concluding words, and there is a lot of positive that indeed, and I echo your words, Kai-Uwe, that Europe can be proud in space. Paul, you mentioned on the other side that maybe we need to change the mindset. With that, maybe we do not need to maybe think so much of how successful we were in the past. Space is a thriving sector, and even like my institute, my colleagues, they regularly produce the data points like how much is the private investment in the European space startups growing, and the graph looks really nice. And when you start looking beyond the graph, you start looking at some of the maybe indications or indicators that are not so interesting or that they are not so positive to see. And so one of these such indicators is, for instance, the fact that as we are seeing the growth of private investment in space startups, mostly venture capital oriented, we are also seeing that the European space startups are still facing problems with especially generating investments in the later stages of their business development portfolio. And this is critical issue. This is really something that even if you want to start during their own space business or join startups, you might end up in this well-known valley of that is problematic. So we do still have challenges. We do still have a lot of positive developments, but there is still work for the space sector or for the space industrial sector to maybe become or to maybe reach the characteristics of some of maybe other business or technology sectors that are there. I, for once, believe that there is a positive future for that, but really wanted to conclude this conversation just to maybe offer a bit of a balanced point of view. With that being said, I thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today on this conversation on the stage. Thank you for the organizers for having me moderate this insightful conversation, and thank you for the questions that you raised in the Menti. I apologize that we did not have the chance to integrate all of them, but then I understand there is a good coffee somewhere out there. And you still have the homework to tell me how to make the better case for space. Thank you for that, and back to the moderation.